Hey, what's going on everybody? I'm Primal Liquid bringing you another Borderlands free guide. And this one is not a weapon, it's actually my Mayhem mode free Moze build, which I am calling Starfire. Simply due to the fact, well, we're kind of raining stars of fire down on people, but that's neither here nor there. Maybe a little slightly related to Starfire from Teen Titans as well. Sorry Starfire, but you kinda like a mass murderer accomplice now. But anywho, so basically the reason I've decided to do this video is a lot of people have been asking on my other Borderlands videos for my Moze build, simply due to the fact it is absolutely destroys Mayhem mode 3. And even though I'm not actually properly geared myself, I'm still missing a few important pieces of gear. It's still incredibly strong. Like, normal enemies just don't stand a hell of a chance. It doesn't matter what sort of negative effect we get from Mayhem mode. You know, I mean, they could be resistant to fire, you know, I mean, my damage could be lowered. They could have 100% more health, more shield, more armor. It doesn't matter. It's like, we still absolutely destroy them, and we don't even use corrosive for armor, shock for shields. It's like we don't do any of that. It's like we quite literally just brute force it with pure fire of hell. So yeah, now obviously the footage you're watching right now is just normal enemies, but what about a couple of bosses? You know what I mean? I wonder just how much damage can we really deal to bosses that have much higher health pools, much higher shield pools. Well, as you're watching right now, they're pretty much the same as normal enemies, you know what I mean? They pretty much just melt. Now, there are a few exceptions to this rule, namely the ones that are resistant to fire damage, like the first Vault boss you fight. You know what I mean? He obviously cycles between 3 different elements, and his final one is fire. That's where the damage slows down a little on him. But other than that, pretty much everything else melts. But yeah guys, without further ado, let's move away from the gameplay and into the actual build. One thing I will say is I'm going to put some timestamps down in the description below, so if you want to check out just gear or you want to check out just skills, then check down in the description. There will be some timestamps there just so you can skip ahead if you want to. But let's jump into it. Okay, so let's take a look at the gear and the skills now. So first off, we have the Nighthawking. Now this is a doll SMG that's really like just stupidly broken basically. It does say cryo on there, however this SMG actually swaps between cryo and fire. So when it's on cryo, it is pretty bad, to be honest. I mean, we can still do some really decent work with it on Mayhem 3, but as soon as it hits fire, that's it. It's like things are just dropping instantly. It's like as soon as we aim over them, basically, they're already dead. I mean, as you can see, nearly 400 damage times 3. So I mean, you're talking 1200 straight off the bat, plus with the fire element and all the bonuses on top of that. I mean, this thing hits for, well, depending on the like negative side effects from Mayhem mode, typically this will be hitting for anywhere between 6 and 10k non-critical. With a critical hit, this will be doing like 15 to 20k on a hit. So very strong there. Next up, we have the Butcher. Now, unfortunately, I am still missing some very important pieces of gear. Namely, I do not have a Fire Butcher yet. So as soon as I get a Fire Elemental one, this will be swapped out for that. But even without the fire for the extra damage from all of Moze's skills, which I'll show you later, like this thing still absolutely destroys everything. And because of Moze's skills where, you know, like you don't really have to reload, you pretty much always have ammo, even with the stupidly high fire rate, you pretty much never run out of ammo on this thing. You can quite literally just hold the fire button down and that's it. It'll just mow anything that's technically still walking in front of you. So, those two are our main sort of clearers. You know, it's like these are going to be the ones that are used to take out all the riffraff. They can be used against bosses as well. However, we do have something better for bosses, and that is the unescapable Cutsman. Now, what this is a Malawan SMG, and this basically shoots two orbs out into the shape of a V letter, and those orbs will continue to separate from each other. However, connecting those two orbs is basically a laser beam, and this laser beam will hit enemies multiple times because it passes through them. So, you know, it's like, just think on a large, like a really large enemy, like a boss, this thing's going to hit it like 6 or 7 times per shot. So add that up, like, I don't know, 5-10 shots. You know, it's like all that damage really ramps up. Add on to the fact it's a fire elemental as well, so we get all the bonuses from Moze. This thing absolutely destroys bosses and is highly recommended to get. Next up, we have the Lyuda. Now, this thing, I mean, come on guys, do I even really need to mention how overpowered this thing is? I'm sure all you guys from Borderlands 2 out there know exactly why I have this. The only problem is, I have it in cryo. I don't have a fire one yet. It is a really tough one to track down as well. Unfortunately, the cryo was from the Zero hunts, and the second one I got was corrosive, and the third one I got was corrosive. You can also get it as a world drop, that's how I got the 2 corrosives, but so far, no fire element. As soon as I get a fire element, I mean, this thing's going to go from doing like 20k on a crit, all the way up to like 40-50k on crit. This thing will be my main boss killer. This will absolutely melt everything as soon as I get fire. Unfortunately, it's just a case of getting the damn fire elemental one. So, moving on. Now we're on to sort of the defensive side of things. So, first things first, I'm using the Transformer. And the main reason for this is the convert to 100% of shock damage into shields. The absorbing bullets is nice, but it's really not necessary. It does help with the Butcher, to be fair, because that can go through a bit of ammo. Same with the Lyuda, but that's just because shotgun and snipers have low max ammo count anyway, maxing out at 144 and 240 each. But as you guys have seen from the gameplay, I have a really high shield and only 1 HP. Now, the main reason I'm using this is for the 100% shock resistance. Obviously, shock just completely annihilates shields. So, if I don't have a way to mitigate shock damage, then my shields are going to go instantly and I'm just going to get absolutely wrecked. So, this is definitely a highly recommended shield, just to keep you basically alive, pretty much. Next up, we have the Rally, well, the class mod, should I say. And this, unfortunately, I've yet to find one with, like, just the skills and the ideal, like, abilities on it. Okay, no, I said that really terribly, to be fair. Basically, I've not found a good one with both the skills that I want and the actual secondary effects, like the splash damage and things like that. The only reason I'm using this one is because it does provide points to the skills that I really do actually want. So that's why it's there at the moment, even though the extra effects are absolutely terrible and I pretty much cannot take advantage of them, other than the splash, mainly due to my grenade. But we're leaving the grenade until last here. Moving on to the artifact. This is a tricky one, to be fair. Now, I did have a really good one, but unfortunately the stash glitch... Oh wait, no, it's there. Okay, yeah, I'm a complete idiot. So yeah, this is the one. The main reason I'm using this one is removes all but 1 health and plus 100% shield capacity. And also the extra recharge rate and also minus recharge delay. This means that when we do run out of shield, it's going to recharge a lot quicker. Now, even though we only have 1 health, you'll be surprised how often you can actually survive with no shield. Mainly due to the fact a lot of times some hits will hit you and they will completely drain your shield, but they won't actually do any health damage until you get hit a second time. So this is why this comes in handy. This drastically takes our shield capacity way up, just giving us that more survivability considering we are on 1 health. And the 1 health is really important, which you'll soon see why. Next up, we have the grenade mod. Now, there are two grenades that I swap between, basically. There's the reoccurring hex, and there's also the firestorm. I do have a singularity firestorm, however, notice how its damage is actually weaker than the regular one. It's a bit of a 50-50 on which one is better. Typically against like single enemies that are quite bulky, you'd use the normal one, and against enemies that are like a lot of smaller enemies, then the singularity would really do some work. However, the best grenade for this build, and also where the star in the Starfire comes from, is the recurring hex. And the reason for this is it splits into two grenades in flight, so just keep track here, that's two grenades already. And then those two grenades each spawn into 3 move grenades. So we have a total of 6 grenades that all home in on enemies. However, each of these grenades will actually basically bombard enemies with a laser beam. And this laser beam, for any class, will get critical hits. However, combined with Moze, with her grenade crit skill, and her skills to boost grenade damage, this thing absolutely destroys everything. Now, I've got it in radiation, I do have a shock variant as well, but what I desperately want is a fire element. Because as you guys saw in the gameplay earlier on, even though we're on Mayhem 3, like, we aren't using we aren't using corrosive, we aren't using shock, you know, we're not doing any of that. And yet, shields and armor just get melted anyway, simply due to all the bonuses we have for the fire damage. And that's why I want to get rid of the radiation for a fire element. Now, the radiation is nice, because obviously it infects enemies, and when you kill them, they will explode as well. So it is really, really good for, like, large groups of smaller enemies, but the overall damage is lower. So for best results, I want to get the fire element, basically, because then I can, well, technically I already do it, but you can just run through enemies, throw a grenade out, and then, you know, it's pretty much all the areas in the area are dead anyway. But a fire element would just make that a little bit easier, a little bit quicker, and also bosses would die that much quicker just to a grenade alone. Okay, so that's all the gear. Let's get on to the skills. Now, straight off the bat, I'm going to say we don't really use Iron Bear. Iron Bear is basically just like an invincibility mechanic. You know, it's like some attacks in this game you can't dodge. So if you just go into Iron Bear, the animation of you getting into Iron Bear and the first couple of seconds while you're in Iron Bear, and then of course the animation while you're jumping out of Iron Bear, you are completely invincible, you take no damage. So that's like a good 3-4 seconds of invincibility. So we don't really care about skills that buff Iron Bear. It's like, it's really not the point. It does do a little bit of damage, which is why I chose a couple of skills for him, but we'll get onto that more in a moment. So straight off the bat, we're using the bottomless mags tree. That is the main tree we're going to focus on here. And we're going to put 5 points in Cloud of Lead, which occasionally Moze and Iron Bear's shots will deal additional incendiary damage and won't consume ammo. So the big thing here is the not consuming ammo. Of course, the extra incendiary damage is nice, but the main thing we want is the free ammo. I do have a point in the Docker Bear, which adds a man turret to the back of Iron Bear, simply due to the fact for when I play co-op. You know, it's like if people want to jump in the back of Iron Bear, then they can. However, it's not really all that useful. One thing you can do is you can take the point out of that and use it in Russian Offensive. This pairs really, really nicely with the Butcher. You can just run through areas and absolutely decimate everything while still keeping top speed. If you don't want that, then I would suggest using it to power up your grenades. So maybe go with something like Fire in the Skag Den, which when you deal splash damage, you deal bonus incendiary damage as well. That would be the main swapping point. Next up, we have Stoke the Embers. So again, just straight up, increase Moze and Iron Bear's incendiary damage by 30%. That's a really, really nice bonus, and a good chunk of our damage comes from that. Next up is Redistribution. After Moze scores a critical hit, she regenerates ammo for a few seconds. Now, this is one that we don't really need, to be honest. It's like, we pretty much have unlimited ammo as is. This just makes sure that we're always topped, basically. It's like, given all the regeneration effects we have from ammo, this is more the icing on the cake. You know what I mean? We're always scoring critical hits, especially with things like the Butcher. So it is a nice little bonus to have. And obviously, you know, you're still going to need a couple of points to get down the tree further anyway. So I chose to get it, and it is better than Scrappy. I mean, Scrappy's just terrible, so I mean, completely ignore that. Next up, we're using Scorching RPMs, which is Moze gains increased fire rate and critical hit damage. I mean, you know, it's obvious. Extra fire rate, more DPS. Extra critical hit damage, more damage overall. So those two combined go really, really well with everything we do, because let's just be honest, we're a walking artillery. Next up, we have the Iron Bank. Increase Moze's magazine size. I mean, the more bullets you've got, the more damage you can do. Plain and simple. Then we have Specialist Bear. Equipping 2 of the same weapons on Iron Bear increases the damage they deal. We don't really use Iron Bear, but we do have an ability where Iron Bear will remain even after we get out. So it's always nice to have this, just so Iron Bear can do a little bit of extra damage. If you don't want that, no problem, stick it in Fire in the Skag Den on the next tree over. Next up, we have a Click Click, which is Moze gains increased gun damage as a magazine empties. The less ammo there is remaining, the greater the increase. And this is up to 36%, and this is a really, really strong one, especially because while Moze regenerates a lot, her ammo does still go down slightly, and when you manage to get lucky on the Butcher and you sort of get stuck on like a 2 or 3 clip, this thing absolutely ramps up the damage, especially combined with all the bonuses to Incendiary and that you can get. Like, this is a really, really strong skill to have. Some for the road, Moze gains infinite ammo for a few seconds after exiting Iron Bear. The only reason I have this is literally just for the Lyuda. Like, it's literally just for that. It basically means for 5 seconds after I get out of Iron Bear, I can just basically hold down I can basically just hold down the fire button with the Lyuda and not have to reload. This basically just absolutely destroys bosses, even though I have the wrong element Lyuda. So again, for 5 seconds, it's just massive damage. And finally, we have Forge. Moze constantly regenerates ammo. Now, this is kind of not true. Well, it's true, but it's not true. So, you do regenerate ammo. However, it's only for your clip and not your ammo reserve. So, when you're not actually in a gunfight, don't reload. Just let the regeneration tick up and refill your ammo that way. Because if you reload your gun, you're not going to regenerate ammo. So, you're technically losing ammo every time you reload your gun. So, again, just do keep that in mind. But again, it's really nice to have. Pretty much gives you unlimited ammo. I mean, come on, who doesn't want unlimited ammo? And finally, we have... Well, sorry, not finally. Well, I suppose I should go on the Iron Bear skills. I'm just using the Exploding Bullets simply due to the fact it's extra damage. It seems to do more damage from me than any of the others, especially when you get out of Iron Bear. So that's why I go for it. Okay, on to the next tree. Now, this one, we're going to be using Grizzled. And sorry, this is the Demolition Woman tree. So, we're using Grizzled, which is a kill skill. Killing an enemy reduces Moze's remaining action skill cooldown time. This skill has diminishing returns. Now, this one, honestly, I should really probably just change over to Fire in the Skag Den. I was more using that while I was testing something out, and I kind of just forgot to change it back. Mainly over the past couple of days. But yeah, I should really change that over to Fire in the Skag Den. So, scratch Grizzled off and use Fire in the Skag Den instead. I'm just an idiot who just keeps forgetting, basically. And I probably should have double-checked all this before the video as well, actually. Anyway, on the second set. Okay, so this one is, again, a bit of a toss-up for whichever you prefer. You've got Stainless Steel Bear, which is extra armor and increased fuel. Now, this is actually nice for Iron Bear, simply due to the fact Iron Bear is actually faster when moving than Moze. So, as long as you keep jumping and using Iron Bear's, like, dash jetpack thing, this will actually be a lot faster than Moze herself can go. So, I use this for the actual extra armor, just so I can get through maps quicker and get to farming spots quicker. Granted, it's really not needed, but it does save time overall. If you don't want that and you just want more damage, then go for Means of Destruction, which is whenever Moze deals splash damage, there is a chance to add ammo to a currently equipped weapons magazine with a smaller chance to return a grenade. The main thing you want here is the grenade chance, honestly. The ammo doesn't really matter all that much, but the grenade chance is pretty nice. And then you could also use Tour Class Promotion, which is basically just doubling your splash damage radius, which, you know, it's pretty nice. Next up we have Auto Bear, which is basically just where Iron Bear will stay out on the field even after you get out of it. Again, it's just for the extra damage. And now we have one of the best skills that Moze has, Pull the Holy Pin, which is Moze's grenades have a chance to score a critical hit, dealing greatly increased damage. Sources of critical hit damage do not affect grenade critical hits. I have no idea why they threw that in there. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but oh well. And this increases your critical hit chance by 30%. Now 30% might seem low, however, that crits a hell of a lot more than you might think. Like, it is insane how often this crits. Combine this with something like a Fire Blast Grenade? Oh, I've already forgot the name of it, man. Not the recurring hex. Firestorm. I was close with Fire Blast, I was close. But no, it's the Firestorm. That combined with the critical hits will do insane damage, because what the Firestorm does is, obviously the grenade explodes, but then it will also rain down 4 giant meteors for like just absolutely massive damage, especially with all the fire buffs we have. Like, each fireball will do about 10 to 15k damage, and that's without a crit. With a crit, it'll obviously do a lot more. So again, it's a really nice skill to have. It also comes in handy for the reoccurring hex, because it does seem to improve the critical hit chance of those grenades as well. Or should I say, rather than the grenades, the actual laser beam. And finally, onto the last tree. This is obviously where our class mod comes into play on this tree. But this is basically the end of the road. You know, like, these are the last points you use on your skill tree. We have Armoured Infantry, which isn't really all that great, to be fair, but it's the best first one, I guess. It's basically just a case of extra damage reduction and gun damage when your shield... No, scratch that, I was completely thinking of the wrong skill there. While Moze's shields are active, she gains damage reduction and increased gun damage. This is actually a really good one. It's this one that I was thinking about that is terrible, because I was originally using this, figured it was terrible, swapped over to this. Extra gun damage, enough said. Damage reduction, I mean, even though we technically only have a shield keeping us alive, the extra damage reduction is nice. This one is more of a bonus to our shield. I don't really recommend putting points into it though, mainly due to the fact we have enough shield from other sources. But yeah, it basically just takes health away from you and adds it to your shield. Next up we have Drowning in the Brass, which is another kill skill. Killing an enemy grants Moze a stack of Drowning in Brass. For each stack Drowning in Brass, Moze's fire rate is reduced but gun damage is increased. Now, notice how the actual effect is 12% gun damage and we only lose 1.5% fire rate. I mean, considering we're using the Butcher, I don't think we really need to worry about fire rate, to be fair. So the extra 12% gun damage is really nice. And obviously, you can use a couple of points from other trees as well if you want to get this up to 5 points. And now we have the good things. These I'm using with my class mod. Basically, we have Moze's gun damage is increased depending on how low our health is. This is really important, and this is the reason why we basically lock ourselves at 1 HP. So we're always gaining the best effect from this, which is 33% extra gun damage. You can get more than that if you actually go down this tree. However, I don't really think it's worth it. But anyway, you know what I mean? An extra 33% is always nice. If you can get a class mod which has 3 points in this, then even better, because you'll go up to 50% gun damage, dealing a hell of a lot more damage. And finally, we have the Phalanx Doctrine, which is another kill skill. After killing an enemy, Moze gains a stack of Phalanx Doctrine. For every stack of Doctrine, Moze's maximum shield and gun damage are increased. Each stack lasts 30 seconds. There is no stack limit. Which means for 30 seconds, you're basically a god in a highly populated area. Because for each enemy we kill, we gain 4% extra gun damage and 6% extra shield. This is insane combined with the Hex Grenade. Especially around an area that's just full of mobs. Because the grenade's just going to wipe the floor with everything. So you're going to get like 10 stacks of this really easily, massively increasing your damage. Especially when combined with something like the Butcher. It's like this mows everything down and is definitely one of the most important skills. Ideally, I want to get a class mod with a lot more than 2 points in this. But after all my grinding, I've not managed to get one with more than 2, unfortunately. So maybe that's the hard cap for class mod skills on here. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, guys, that is my Moze Mayhem 3 Starfire build. As you guys have seen, both at the start of this video and over all the other videos on my channel, if you've been watching them, this thing absolutely destroys Mayhem 3. We don't need to worry about any of the buffs or negative effects from Mayhem mode. We just power through it. Like, we literally burn everything to the ground. We are a walking artillery tank of fire. But that's where I'm going to end this video, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, then be sure to hit that like button and leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this build and Moze in general. I'm really curious what everyone thinks about her. But if you're new around here, then make sure you hit that subscribe button as well for even more Borderlands 3 content. As always though, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.